Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. One of the most exciting matchups went down last night as LSU and Florida State squared off, and we learned a lot about both of these programs, but more specifically, this Florida State Seminoles program. This is a team that we've talked a ton about during the offseason and talked about why they could be so special in 2023. And one of the things that we kind of consistently brought up was not even like the talent on this team. This is one of the best rosters that you've seen from in terms of top end talent standpoint, from a depth standpoint. This Florida State team is a top 8, top 5 roster in the country. But what we kind of talked about and why this team could be special in 2023, win a national title in 2023, is that the veteran leadership and the culture that's been instilled by Mike Norvell, guys like Jordan Travis and Jared Verse, that's special. And you saw that on full display last night when Florida State kind of started out a very rocky performance for the first quarter and a half. And then they flip the script. They come out of halftime and absolutely blow the doors off an LSU team that I still think is a top 8 team in the country. This is one of the better college football teams that we'll see in 2023. And Florida State playing their A-plus ball in the second half might be one of, if not the best team in the country. Excited to get down to, one, what did we learn? And then talk a little bit X's and O's in terms of what we saw on the offensive side of the ball, what we saw on the defensive side of the ball. Now, before we do, again, just want to say thank you to you guys, and especially the Florida State fans. Like, the support you guys have shown all offseason, as we've talked a ton of Florida State football, truly means a lot. So if you do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. But more importantly, again, would love to hear from you guys in the comment section. Watch this game 3 times. So I think I got a lot of stuff. But again, you guys probably saw some stuff that maybe I missed. So let me know in the comment section what your biggest takeaway was. Again, appreciate you guys rocking with the boys. And let's get into it. Now, I want to hammer home first, like, the culture that was on display. I mean, Jordan Travis specifically, I think he would grade himself out as a C- for the first quarter and a half, right? Some really sloppy throws, some really poor decisions. That's not the Jordan Travis that I think a lot of us expected. And then the post-game interview said, yeah, there was some early game nerves, which you get. Now, what was most special about his performance is he goes and puts points on the board to end the half, and then comes out of halftime and was nearly flawless to finish that game. Jordan Travis is he's the heartbeat and soul of this team. And to see him rally the way that he did in the second half, that's what we're kind of getting at in terms of that culture and veteran leadership. Mike Norvell was about to lose his mind in terms of all the personal fouls in the first half, but he never lost his composure. He would just go up, talk to the player, and say, hey, we can't do that. It never snowballed. And when they came out in the second half, again, this was probably the best I've seen Florida State play. And we've seen them play good ball in 2022. This was the best performance in that second half that we've seen from Florida State. And if they can play at that level consistently throughout the 2023 season, that is one of the best teams in the country. So the culture and veteran leadership was just on full display yesterday. Now, I want to talk a little bit about the X's and O's on both sides of the football. And let's start on the offense. We talked about Jordan Travis. I really think played almost flawlessly that second half. But what your biggest takeaway was, and this is something that we've talked about at length in the offseason, was this is the best wide receiver group Jordan Travis has had to work with during his whole career at Florida State. And it was pretty damn good last year. In 2021 and 2020, it was one of the worst in the ACC. Right now, I think you're looking at one of the best wide receiver groups in the whole entire country. And when you go look at back at a former national championship teams, the quarterback wide receiver battery is massively important. You think about guys like Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, and Justin Jefferson, or you think about all the Alabama quarterbacks with the stud wide receivers. It's a very important aspect for a national championship team. And I think Florida State has a really special kind of trio, I'd say. And you could probably add some other Florida State wide receivers in too. But let's talk about kind of the stars of the night. You got to start with Keon Coleman, who, coming over from Michigan State, I don't think the national media was on Keon Coleman as much as the Florida State fans were. And as much as I was as a Michigan fan, I've seen Keon Coleman come out as a freshman and sophomore and dominate Michigan's defensive backs. So when I saw him going up and just winning those contested catch 50-50 balls consistently, I wasn't surprised because I saw it back-to-back years as a Michigan fan. I'm very happy he's not in the Big Ten. I think he's one of the best wide receivers in the country. I think you saw that yesterday in terms of how well he can go up and make plays with that football in the air, how good his movement skills are in terms of creating separation. The first touchdown, when you catch it in stride, make 2 people miss, and then go finish a 50-yard touchdown catch, that type of stuff, the rare blend of size, speed, athleticism, movement skills, Keon Coleman is looking like he's going to be a first round draft pick. Not on the other side. I mean, Johnny Wilson is truly another kind of unicorn special athlete that, yes, he needs to catch some footballs on a more consistent basis. That being said, like 6'7", how well he can create separation as a big athlete like that. He presents such a matchup nightmare for all sorts of defensive backs. You're looking at, I mean, a trio in Jordan Travis, Keon Coleman, and Johnny Wilson that's truly special. And then you look at the supporting cast, right? Jaheim Bell, in his limited opportunities, was extremely special. I think Winston Wright is going to come on like you saw him, and I think he's going to be a more useful as the season goes on, as he kind of recovers from that injury. But when you have two guys on the outside who are as dominant as Keon Coleman and Johnny Wilson, I think you're going to see a lot of safeties get pushed out to the boundary. And what does that open up? A lot of space in the middle of the field for a guy like Jaheim Bell, for a guy like Winston Wright Jr., who really, really good with the football in their hands. Now, the run game, I think they did a really good job in the second half, kind of making some adjustments. You saw a lot of two running backs in the backfield and had a little bit more success. Again, I still think Trey Benson is one of the best running backs in the country. I think this offensive line is improved. That's probably the one group that you want to see continue to make some improvements as the season goes on. But I will say, I mean, this LSU front seven is probably about as good as you'll see across the country this year. And so Florida State not dominating LSU up front, that's not massive cause for concern. I actually thought they did a pretty good job holding their own, especially when LSU brought some heat. Again, LSU's going to get theirs. This is one of they got NFL guys all along that front seven. LSU was going to win sometimes up front, but I think Florida State's offensive line did enough to be like, yeah, this is a group that's still trending in the right direction, and probably a group that if it takes some steps come late November, again, this is one of the more complete Florida State teams, especially on the offensive side of the ball. Now, on the defensive side of the ball, this was a group that you talk about playing big when it matters. And this is, I feel like, a more important stat than people give it credit. All right, you take a look at when they were on the money downs, right? 3 of 10 getting off the field. LSU was 0 of 3 on fourth down. Those type of things are massive when you have to win tight games. Like this was a very evenly matched game, right? And what did it come down to? It came down to Florida State's defense showing up when it mattered, right? Third down, fourth down, forcing some key turnovers. That's the type of stuff that matters. That's the type of stuff that wins you a national championship. And I thought this Florida State defense really did show up when it mattered. The next thing I want to note, how deep this team is on the defensive line. And that is something that, again, we've talked a lot about. Like, we know Florida State has a lot of top end talent. Jared Verse, although didn't crush the stat sheet or light up the stat sheet last night, was the most impactful player on the defense side of the ball in terms of how good he is against the run, in terms of how good he is with manufacturing quarterback pressures. Jared Verse does not allow pockets to form very easily. I think he's going to be a top 10 pick come the 2024 NFL draft. Massive, massive player. You have Patrick Payton on the other side, but I don't even think those guys were the stars of the game. Like, Braden Fisk, Fabian Lovett, Jared Verse, Patrick Payton, those guys are dudes. That's not surprising to us. What I was really happy with is the depth of some guys. I mean, Joshua Farmer, in his limited snaps when he was getting rotated in, I thought was probably one of the best players on this Florida State defense. And so you talk about depth, you talk about winning in the second half because you have depth on that defensive line to cycle in and out. I mean, that's what you saw, I think, last night is this team played their best ball in the second half because they have depth on that front seven. Thought another guy that was really good, Gilbert Edmond, coming over from South Carolina, another dude that not necessarily talked about enough because guys like Keon Coleman were coming in the transfer portal. Thought Gilbert Edmond was also very, very good in that front seven. I thought the linebacker, it's about as good of linebacker play that we've seen. Again, Jaden Daniels one on a few, right? When you had him spied, and he's one of the better quarterbacks in the country. He's going to get his, but I thought Tatum Bethune is really emerging as that leader of the Florida State defense. Thought DJ Lundy was pretty damn good, had some very, very key plays. And on the back end, again, LSU has some elite wide receiver play, but you saw some guys really step up. I think Fentrell Cypress is going to continue to emerge as one of those top guys in that cornerback room. And if you can have a stud cornerback that you trust putting on islands, that makes calling a defense a lot easier. And so my biggest takeaways from this Florida State team is you saw the stars of this team take over the game when they needed to. Jordan Travis, Keon Coleman, Johnny Wilson, even Trey Benson towards the end of the game, I thought played some good football. But more importantly, I think you saw the depth of this Florida State team really show out in the second half. And you talk about winning games, tight winning games in the second half. You have to have depth, especially on that front seven. And that's what I thought was most special about this Florida State team, that going back last year, Florida State had a lot of these same guys playing last year. I don't think they had the depth. I don't think Joshua Farmer was quite ready last year. These guys in the back end on the 2 and 3 deep seem like they're more ready to take some steps. And I think that is something that really is going to help Florida State get over that hump. So you combine an elite culture, one of the best cultures I think we're seeing in college football being established by Mike Norvell, top end talent. I mean, you got multiple guys who I think could be All Americans: Keon Coleman, Jared Verse, Jordan Travis, Trey Benson. So you got elite talent. Johnny Wilson out there in there, Jaheim Bell out there in there. You have elite talent, you have an elite culture, and you also have the depth. And those are like the three things that you're looking at winning a national championship. You need all three of those things. I think Florida State has all three of those things. This is going to be a very fun team to watch. This was probably the biggest game. Fire me up for the Clemson game. We're going to learn about Clemson tonight. Very, very excited about this Mike Norvell team. Again, a program that I'm a Michigan fan. Really hard not to root for this Mike Norvell program. Very excited for the Florida State fans. Again, Florida State fans, appreciate you guys rocking with the boys. If you do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Appreciate you guys, and we'll talk to y'all